Hello, my name is Alex Ars, and in today's episode I'm going to talk about my experience of digging on Lindisfarne. Welcome back. So in the summer I had an opportunity to go and dig on Lindisfarne with Dig Ventures, who at the end of the dig, if you've signed up to it, give you this t-shirt, which is fantastic. So as you can see, I'm wearing my archaeology t-shirt, and I thought I'd tell you about the dig as well. So the dig on Lindisfarne's been going on for the last 6 years, and it's absolutely fantastic because they're discovering about the early medieval monastery on the island. Obviously it's most famous for the Viking raid in 793 AD, but nevertheless it has an amazing additional history and is a hugely important site for the northeast of England because it's had a massive impact on the Christian faith and how it shaped the building of later institutions such as the Prince Bishops of County Durham, who inherited much of the power that the previous bishops of Lindisfarne during the Anglo-Saxon or early medieval period had had. Anyway, moving past that, talking about my dig. First of all, this is the trench I was working in, and just behind you can see the ruins of the Norman Priory of Lindisfarne as well. So I'll mention that in passing too. But I set off from home because, like all good adventures, I managed to misread my documents, and I thought the dig started at 9 AM. Now, Lindisfarne, as you probably may be aware if you've watched some of the other videos, is a tidal island. So when I looked on the tides, I realised the tides went out at 5:30 in the morning. So I set off from my house at 3 o'clock in the morning, drove up to Lindisfarne, got onto the island, parked up, and decided to have a couple of hours sleep in the car before the dig obviously would start, in my mind, at 9. I didn't sleep that well and got up around about 6:30, 7 o'clock, and then proceeded to take out my camera and film. So if you go onto the channel, you can see some amazing 360-degree footage just as the sun was rising on Lindisfarne, and I walked around Lindisfarne so you get a real sense of what the island's like. But those are on the channel, obviously, as you can see them. Now, when I was really enjoying it, but I found out later on that the dig didn't start till around about 10:30 because people had to wait to get onto the island, obviously as the tide went back out again, and then from there the team would come together and start digging. So I met some of the team, had a chat with them, and then proceeded to this to this trench behind me. So in this trench behind me there is a focal burial, which is a chest and then surrounded by other smaller burials, and there was another one right beside it as well. There was also a skeleton down here that was being moved, and then this was my section up here that I was cleaning out. Just the day before, a namestone had been found in that area, so they were just like, oh, get ready to dig in that area, it's going to be really exciting. And just as I began my dig, just around about here, Dr. David Petts from Durham University found another namestone. Well, actually one of the other diggers beside me found it, but she had just taken it, passed it up to him, he turned it over, and there was actually an Anglo-Saxon namestone. And even though in a previous episode I've talked about that, just to give you an understanding of what a namestone is, they're the Anglo-Saxon equivalent of a tombstone. So they're small pieces of stone, roughly about this big, with the name of the individual on it, and they're normally carved with wonderful Anglo-Saxon artwork as well, normally in the shape of a cross or other depictions very similar to the art you see in the Lindisfarne Gospels and things like that. So then I continued my dig throughout the day. And as I dug down through the levels through here, but I was digging through a lot of charnel. Charnel obviously being like a combination of animal, sometimes animal bone, but also a lot of human bone as well, because the whole area around here, once the monastery was dissolved during the reign of King Henry VIII, was also used as a location where people would farm. So when people were ploughing the land around there, they were digging up older medieval burials, and that would churn up in the ground. So they weren't complete skeletons, but I discovered a wonderful finger bone, which obviously then was recorded as well, but nothing really more substantial than that. A lot of animal bone and a couple of pieces of human bone, but mostly it was animal bone. But I dug through the layers of all of the rock, and unfortunately over the course of the day didn't discover anything. But it was a wonderful experience because there were people dealing with cleaning up human remains just down here, some students from Cambridge University, and also alongside that from Durham University, who were just tidying up a burial down in this area. And alongside that as well, they were just discovering a chest burial just over here as well, which would mean 2 chest burials in and around those trenches there. So it was an amazing experience to be on the island, because as you were looking at all of this, there was loads of stuff going on. And actually one of my course mates on my master's went the next day, and while they were digging at Lindisfarne, someone else actually discovered some Roman pottery, which has caused for a little bit of a stir as well. Though I was speaking to one of my lecturers, and Dr. James Gerard, and he turned around and said, well, actually they've discovered Roman pottery on Barbados, so it doesn't mean anything, which is true. Obviously Roman pottery was reused, and it could end up within ballast or all sorts of things like that. But it's really interesting to see that there was Roman pottery being used within an early medieval context on Lindisfarne as well. So that's the sort of my experience of the dig, and as I was digging there, it was just learning how to dig well. So obviously digging with the matlock, removing large pieces of stone, but alongside that as well using a trowel, managing to remove layers of soil carefully and basically cleaning up my section before going down again into the next level. So obviously when I met up with a team at Dig Ventures, I bumped into some of the people who I dug with previously. So I think some of you who've been on the channel for a while will remember I dug at a broch in the Scottish borders, which is basically like a castle crossed with a roundhouse. Really cool. Definitely watch that video if you get a chance, because you can learn something about some of the structure of the Scottish borders and Scottish archaeology as well. But when I dug with them, then I met them a second time, and I was digging on the trench right here, and it's a really good experience to be able to dig with the same group of people again and continue to learn and grow. I also got to see the finds room. So if you've seen my video on my favourite finds from Lindisfarne, you can actually see some of the things that I got to actually handle, such as the coin from King Edward, or alongside that as well, the amazing glass gaming counter. And to be able to go into the finds room and actually be able to touch these items that are centuries old, but basically look just fresh and beautiful in your hands, and to understand that these were used either as currency or as, you know, leisure by someone else, or they were carefully carved to commemorate where someone was laid to rest. It's a wonderful and beautiful experience, and it just filled me with so much excitement. And I do admit there were some very awkward giggles coming out of my mouth when you get to pick up that gaming counter and be able to see the beauty of the intricate work of the twisted glass and just the beauty of it. You know, stuff like that, you really get an experience of understanding the craftsmanship of this early medieval period, which is definitely not a dark age, but a really amazing period of different cultures mixing together and creating these amazing items. Especially between Scandinavia and obviously the area that would eventually become England. So that's really cool in its own way. So not only are you able to dig and discover stuff there, but you're also able to see previous year's work, interact with archaeologists. I got to have a tour of the site. So just up there is the Hewf, which is a natural rock formation just up there. And Dr. David Petts, who's one of the professors from Durham University, was doing a tour and explaining the context of the Holy Island of Lindisfarne, of this area, to myself and a couple of other volunteers. And so I got to have this sort of perspective that isn't the normal story that we often hear about the northeast of England. So obviously the traditional story we get is that when the great heathen host comes in, the monks at Lindisfarne don't feel safe anymore, and they take the body of St Cuthbert with them and start a long journey before eventually ending up at Chester Street. And then Chester Street doesn't become safe anymore, so they return to Lindisfarne for a year after being away for 115 years, and then they go to Durham. So that's the traditional story we're told by a monk called Simeon of Durham. But actually, David Petts pointed out that there was a much more sort of nuanced story that we might actually be seeing here at Lindisfarne, but there may be way more levels, and that the monastery continued. The monks didn't abandon it. Maybe some monks left, but actually this was a part of a large church community that stretched over a number of different sites, including a site just on the other side of the water, a place called Norham, which also was said to hold St Cuthbert's relics for a while. And there were other sites around there too. So it's really interesting to see that there is there's a much more in-depth story than what we generally think of when it comes to the story of Christianity in the northeast, but also the story of Lindisfarne as well. So that really added to my whole experience of digging on the island. even though I didn't discover anything more significant than human bones, which I would like to clearly state is actually something significant in its own right, because obviously that was once a person, a human being who had their own life experiences and then was laid to rest on Lindisfarne, either being a part of the village community or choosing to go to Lindisfarne so that when they passed away their body could be buried on the site. But many people would obviously, when you're a part of a dig, really hope to discover something that would be seen as treasure or something that would be recorded. Even though I didn't do that, I love the experience of digging at the site and adding to a broader understanding of what's going on in the medieval community. Because the area where I was digging wasn't deep enough at that point to actually discover something, but there was always a learning experience and being able to be a part of discovering that. And in the future, I will come across another dig or go along to one of those and learn more about it. But with companies like Dig Venture, you get the chance of actually signing up and joining on to these digs and actually understanding how to do archaeological work well, how to record it, how to learn all about this and be a part of learning about history and discovering more about the past. And Lindisfarne especially is now showing that our traditional understanding of, oh well, the monks had to leave when the great heathen host came into England and that they went on a long journey before ending up in Chester Street might not necessarily be true, and that the monastery survived and was actually very vibrant for many centuries after the great heathen host came in. So that was my little explanation of what I saw when I was at Lindisfarne and the dig that I was a part of. I really hope you've enjoyed it. It's a shorter video today, but as always, please do like and subscribe, share the videos with your friends, and if you've got any questions, put them in the comment section below. I'm always willing to chat to you and I'd always like to as well. And if you'd like to support me further, I do have a Ko-fi and a Patreon account, which you can find in the description below. Stay safe and well, and I hope you'll join me for another episode in the near future. Thank you very much.